Commander Tyke walked into the massive war room with his boots making loud sounds on the metal floor. His purple skin looked bright under the white lights that covered the ceiling. The room was huge, with walls made of shiny metal and screens showing star maps from across the galaxy. Around the long table sat military leaders from 12 different worlds, and they were all laughing very loud. The topic that made them so happy was Earth and the humans who lived there. More specifically, they were talking about the criminals that humans called dangerous. General Juan was telling a story that made everyone laugh so hard their different colored skins changed shades. She had 4 arms and she waved all of them while she spoke. "You should see what they call dangerous criminals," she said while her yellow eyes sparkled with fun. "They have this human who robbed some banks and they think he is scary." The room filled with even more laughter. These alien beings had destroyed entire planets and killed millions of people. To them, a human bank robber was like a baby playing with toys. Captain Day leaned forward on the table. His green scales shifted to a brighter color when he got excited, which happened a lot during these meetings. The funniest part, he said, is how scared humans get of their own kind. They have this list of most wanted criminals, and the worst one only killed maybe 50 people in his whole life. More laughter echoed around the room. In galactic terms, 50 deaths was nothing. Some of the aliens at this table had killed more people before breakfast. The idea that humans would fear someone who killed so few was hilarious to them. Lieutenant Bo stood up and walked to one of the big screens. He pressed some buttons, and pictures of human criminals appeared on the display. "Look at these," he said, pointing at the images. "These are supposed to be the most dangerous humans alive. This one killed 3 people with a knife. This one robbed 15 stores. This one sold drugs to other humans." The aliens looked at the pictures and laughed even harder. They had seen real monsters, creatures from dark planets that ate their own children and breathed poison gas, beings that could tear apart starships with their bare hands. Compared to those nightmares, these human criminals looked like harmless pets. Agent Q materialized next to the screen using his stealth technology. His invisible form became solid, and he smiled with sharp teeth, showing these humans, he said, are so weak that they fear each other. We have been watching their movies and reading their police reports. Everything shows us the same thing. They are soft creatures who get scared by shadows. Commander Tyke stood up and everyone became quiet. The room was filled with beings who had conquered star systems, enslaved entire species, and turned suns into weapons. They respected Tyke because he had done all of these things and more. His voice was deep and strong when he spoke. "When we invade Earth next month," he announced, "we will use their own criminals against them. These humans are so afraid of their lawbreakers that seeing them fight for us will break their spirit completely." The other aliens nodded their heads in agreement. The plan seemed perfect and simple. General Juan spoke up again, her 4 arms gesturing wildly. "We capture some of their worst criminals and force them to be our soldiers. When the regular humans see their own dangerous people working for us, they will give up without fighting. It will be the easiest conquest in galactic history." The meeting continued for hours as they planned their invasion. They had studied Earth for months, watching human behavior and learning about their weaknesses. Everything they saw convinced them that humans were the weakest species they had ever encountered. Their technology was primitive, their weapons were basic, and their criminals were jokes. Captain Day brought up another point that made everyone laugh. "Their prison systems are pathetic." He said they lock up criminals in concrete boxes and think that makes them secure. Some of their worst prisoners just sit in cells all day, reading books or exercising. We could break any human out of their strongest prison in minutes. What the aliens did not know was that some files were marked with words they had never seen. Files that said classified in red letters. Files that were hidden so deep in Earth databases that even most humans did not know they existed. These files contained information about facilities that did not appear on any map. In these hidden places were prisoners that made other criminals go quiet when their names were whispered. Humans who had earned reputations so dark that even hardened killers would check their locks twice before going to sleep. People who had done things so terrible that governments decided they should never see daylight again. The aliens had no idea that some humans carried names that brought fear to anyone who heard them. They did not know about the black sites buried deep underground or the prisoners kept in cells designed by people who understood that some monsters looked exactly like normal people. None of them had heard the name that made even the toughest criminals fall silent. When it was spoken, the name that appeared in files so secret that reading them required permission from the highest levels of government. The name that came with warnings written in multiple languages, Baba Yaga. The meeting ended with loud laughter and confident predictions of easy victory. The alien commanders shook hands with their various appendages and made plans for the next day. They would start by capturing human criminals to build their invasion force. They expected to find scared, desperate people who would be grateful for a chance to survive. They expected weakness, cowardice, and submission. They had no idea that they were about to wake something that had been sleeping in the deepest, darkest places on Earth. Something that governments kept locked away not to protect society from it, but to protect it from what society might become if it was ever set free. As the aliens left the war room making jokes about human weakness, none of them noticed the small warning that appeared on every file about Earth criminals that they had dismissed. The warning was always the same in every language. Some doors should never be opened. The invasion would begin tomorrow, and they were certain it would end with complete victory. They had no way of knowing that their mockery of Earth criminals would soon turn to terror when they met the legend that other criminals only whispered about in the darkest corners of the most secure prisons. The Baba Yaga was waiting, and he had been waiting for a very long time. 3 galactic scout ships moved through Earth's atmosphere like silent shadows in the night sky. Their hulls were black and absorbed all light, making them invisible to human detection systems. The ships moved without sound, using technology that bent space around them. Each ship carried a team of alien soldiers trained in stealth operations and prisoner capture. Agent Q stood in the main ship, looking at screens that showed human prison locations. His body could become invisible at will, using advanced technology that his species had developed over thousands of years. His pale blue skin looked almost white under the ship lights, and his large black eyes studied the human facilities below. The mission seemed simple to all of them: capture the most dangerous human criminals and use them as examples during the invasion. The alien commanders had spent weeks studying human prison systems, and they had identified their targets. Maximum security facilities held the worst criminals that humanity had to offer. Or so they believed. San Quentin State Prison appeared on their screens like a gray concrete box sitting on the edge of land near water. The facility looked primitive compared to galactic detention centers, but the aliens knew it held over 4,000 human prisoners. Many of these prisoners had killed other humans or committed crimes that human society considered terrible. Agent Q activated his stealth field, and his body disappeared completely from view. He could still be heard and felt, but no human eyes would be able to see him. He teleported down to the prison using transportation technology and materialized inside the facility. The guards never knew that death had just walked past them. The corridors were long and lined with metal bars that separated the prisoners from freedom. Inside the cells, humans paced back and forth like caged animals. Some had tattoos covering their skin that told stories of violence and gang membership. Others sat quietly on their beds staring at walls they had been looking at for years. The alien moved through the prison studying each prisoner. He could see their files appear on his wrist device as he looked at them. This one had killed 3 people in a drug deal. This one had robbed 15 banks. This one had burned down buildings with people inside. All of them looked dangerous to other humans, but to galactic standards they seemed pathetic. Agent Q selected 15 prisoners who had the worst records for violence and murder. The capture process was simple. His species had developed energy bonds that could hold any biological creature. The bonds appeared around the prisoners, wrists and ankles like glowing chains, and they could not be broken by any amount of human strength. The prisoners screamed and fought against their bonds, which only made the aliens more amused. These humans thought they were tough, but they were helpless against basic galactic technology. Within an hour, all 15 prisoners had been transported to the scout ships without setting off a single alarm. Lieutenant Bo examined their prizes with satisfaction. "These are your most dangerous criminals," he asked, while watching a prisoner struggle uselessly against his bonds. "This one killed 3 people and thinks he is terrifying." The alien's laugh sounded like metal grinding against metal. His own kill count was measured in thousands, not single digits. The captured humans continued to scream threats and curse, words that meant nothing to their alien captors. Some tried to bargain for their freedom, others demanded to know what was happening. All of them showed the kind of fear that the aliens expected from a weak species. But as the scout ships prepared to leave Earth's orbit, Captain Nam received new intelligence data from their deep scanning systems. Hidden in classified government databases, they had found references to facilities that did not appear on any official map: black sites, secret prisons, places where the most dangerous humans disappeared forever. The files spoke of criminals so deadly that even mentioning their names could bring unwanted attention from government agencies. These prisoners were kept in locations buried deep underground, or hidden in remote areas where no one would ever find them. The security around these facilities was unlike anything used for normal criminals. One file caught Captain Nam's attention more than the others. It contained information about a prisoner, held in a facility beneath the Colorado mountains. The record was mostly covered in black ink that hid the details, but one piece of information remained clear. The prisoner's codename was Baba Yaga. The file contained warnings that seemed strange. Even for human standards, do not wake him. Do not speak his name near the cell. Do not look directly at him for more than 3 seconds. Do not interview him without backup present. Do not trust anything he says, even if it seems helpful. Captain Nam read through reports written by guards who had worked at the facility. Many of them requested transfers to other locations after only a few months. Some wrote about nightmares that would not stop. Others mentioned feeling watched even when they were alone. The last psychologist who tried to interview the prisoner had resigned after one session, leaving only a note that said, "Some monsters wear human faces." The alien captain laughed at what seemed like human superstition, but something about the file made him curious. Why would Earth's government hide this prisoner so completely? Why did every guard report mention fear and psychological problems? Why were the security measures around this one human more extreme than anything used for their worst criminals? Lieutenant Bo looked over his shoulder at the file. "This is probably just human fear making them see monsters where none exist," he said. "But if Earth considers this prisoner their ultimate criminal, he could be useful for terrorizing the population during our invasion." The decision was easy. They would collect this mysterious prisoner too. After all, if Earth governments considered him dangerous enough to hide in their deepest facility, he must be worth having. The aliens began tracking electromagnetic signatures and satellite blind spots that led toward the hidden facility. As their ships changed course toward Colorado, none of the aliens noticed the final warning that appeared at the end of every file about the Baba Yaga. The warning was written in multiple human languages and repeated several times throughout the documents. "He is not imprisoned to protect society from him. He is imprisoned to protect him from what society might become." The warning made no sense to the galactic soldiers. They could not understand why any society would need protection from itself because of one prisoner. But they would learn the meaning of those words very soon. The hunt for Earth's ultimate criminal was about to begin, and they had no idea what they were walking into. The ships descended toward the Colorado mountains, carrying aliens who thought they were predators, hunting prey. They did not know that they were about to wake something that had been sleeping in darkness, waiting for the right moment to open its eyes. Inside the massive alien command ship, Shin sat perfectly still in his energy cage while hundreds of galactic soldiers gathered around to see Earth's supposedly most dangerous criminal. The containment field hummed with power that could hold a raging beast, but the human inside looked more like a tired office worker than a legendary monster. General Huan approached the cage with her forearms crossed over her chest, showing complete contempt. Her yellow skin had shifted to a darker shade that indicated displeasure among her species. "So you are the famous Baba Yaga," she said with mockery dripping from every word. "Earth's ultimate nightmare. You look pathetically ordinary for someone who required such extreme security measures." Behind her, dozens of alien soldiers pointed at the prisoner and laughed among themselves. They had seen real terrors in their conquests across the galaxy, creatures from nightmare worlds that could tear apart battleships with their claws, beings that fed on fear itself, and left entire planets empty of life. Compared to those horrors, this quiet human seemed like a harmless pet captain. Day stepped closer to examine the prisoner through the energy barrier. His green scales shifted to brighter colors as his excitement grew. "We expected some kind of monster," he said to the crowd of soldiers. "Instead, we find a middle-aged human who looks like he spends his time reading books. This is what made Earth governments so afraid that they buried him underground." The laughter grew louder as more aliens gathered to see the disappointing prisoner. Some of them had been looking forward to meeting Earth's most dangerous criminal, expecting to find something worthy of their respect. Instead, they found what appeared to be an ordinary man who had somehow gained a reputation far beyond his abilities. Shin met General Huan's gaze with steady dark eyes that seemed to look right through her. When he spoke, his voice carried that same quiet tone that somehow demanded attention despite never rising above a whisper. "Do you know what Baba Yaga means?" he asked, as if starting a casual conversation. The question caught the aliens off guard. They had expected threats or pleas for mercy, not a calm inquiry about folklore. General Huan recovered first and gestured dismissively. "We do not care about your primitive stories, human. Your fairy tales mean nothing to beings who have conquered star systems." Shin nodded as if he had expected that response. "It comes from old stories on Earth." He continued, speaking to the entire crowd as if he were teaching a Class A witch who lived in a house that walked on chicken legs. She lived deep in dark forests where lost children would sometimes wander. She would test these children and decide their fate. Lieutenant Bo interrupted with impatience. "We did not bring you here for storytelling, human. We brought you here to serve as an example of human weakness when we invade your pathetic world." But Shin continued as if he had not been interrupted. "Parents told these stories to keep their children close to home, safe from dangers they could not see or understand. The Baba Yaga was not just a monster. She was a warning about what happened to children who wandered too. Far from safety, Agent Q moved closer to the energy field, trying to intimidate the prisoner with his presence. "Your bedtime stories do not frighten us, human. We have faced creatures that could eat your strongest warriors alive. These childish tales are meaningless to real predators." Shin smiled again with that cold expression that contained no warmth. "Here is what you do not understand about Earth stories," he said, while his eyes moved slowly across the alien faces. "We do not tell scary stories because we are afraid of monsters. We tell them because we recognize the monsters inside ourselves. Every frightening tale humans create comes from something we understand about our own nature." The temperature in the room seemed to drop as his words sank in. Some of the aliens shifted uncomfortably, though they could not explain why a simple statement from a caged prisoner should make them uneasy. The original Baba Yaga served a specific purpose. Shin continued in that same terrifyingly calm way. She was a test of character. Good children who showed respect, courage, and kindness, she would help find their way home safely. But children who were rude, greedy, cruel, or selfish, she paused, letting the silence stretch until every alien was hanging on his next word. She would feed them to her oven bones. And all Commander Tyke pushed through the crowd to stand directly in front of the containment field. "Are you trying to scare us with ancient stories about witches and ovens?" he demanded, with growing irritation. "We have destroyed civilizations that existed before your species learned to make fire." Shin looked directly at the commander with eyes that seemed far older than his apparent age. "I am not trying to scare anyone," he said softly. "I am trying to help you understand what you have done. You see, they did not give me the name Baba Yaga because I am cruel or violent, or because I enjoy causing pain." The energy restraints around his wrists flickered for just a moment, but none of the aliens noticed the brief disruption. "They gave me this name because I became very, very good at making determinations," he continued while studying each alien face with the focused attention of someone solving a puzzle. "I learned how to tell the difference between people who deserve help and people who deserve to be fed to the oven. And I have been sitting in this cage for the past hour, making those same determinations about each of you." Something in his manner had changed, becoming more focused and present. The casual way he examined his captors suggested a predator studying prey, rather than a prisoner accepting defeat. The aliens began to realize that the quiet man in the cage was not afraid of them at all. "Your fundamental mistake," Shin said while the energy bonds continued to flicker around his wrists, was assuming that my government locked me away to protect society from me. "The truth is much more complicated and much more dangerous for people like you." General Huan leaned closer to the containment field, her forearms tense with growing concern. "What are you talking about, human? What is the real reason for your imprisonment?" "They locked me away to protect me from society," Shin explained with genuine sadness in his voice. "Because once normal people learn what I am truly capable of accomplishing, they stop seeing me as human. They start seeing me as something else entirely, and that makes everything I have to do so much easier." The lights in the detention center began to dim as power fluctuations rippled through systems designed never to fail. The energy restraints around Shin's wrists sparked once and then faded completely as he stood calmly in his cell, now completely unbound, as alarms began to sound throughout. The massive ship Shin stepped through the energy barrier as if it were made of air. The aliens reached for their weapons but found their movement slow and clumsy, as if the air itself had become thick. "You wanted to meet the Baba Yaga," Shin said, as he began walking toward the exit with purposeful strides. "Now you understand why some doors should never be opened, and why some monsters choose to sleep in cages until the right moment comes to wake up." The first sign that something had gone terribly wrong came when the lights throughout the massive alien warship began to flicker and dim. Power systems that had never failed in decades of service started showing errors that made no sense to the engineering crews. Throughout the vessel, backup generators kicked in and emergency lighting cast red shadows in corridors where bright white light should have been in the detention center. Agent Q stared at his control panel in growing panic as every system reading showed impossible results. The energy restraints that should have been holding their human prisoner displayed as offline, but the power cells showed full charge. The containment field registered as active, while also showing no energy signature at all. "Impossible," he breathed, while frantically pressing buttons that refused to respond. Those restraints could hold a Krothak battle beast weighing 10 tons. No human has the physical strength to break technology designed by the greatest engineers in the galaxy. But Shin had not used strength to escape his bonds. While the aliens mocked him and made threats, he had quietly observed every component of their supposedly perfect technology. He studied power flow patterns, identified weak points in energy distribution systems, and found flaws in designs that their creators had never imagined could exist. "I told you before," Shin said, as he stepped through the energy barrier like it was made of nothing but air strength. "Was never my gift. My talent lies in understanding systems, prison systems, security systems, government systems, technological systems, and most importantly, understanding how to make any system work for me instead of against me." The aliens finally understood. They were no longer looking at a helpless prisoner, but at something far more dangerous. Lieutenant Bo reached for his weapon but discovered that Shin was no longer standing where he had been a moment before. The human moved with speed that seemed impossible, covering distances in ways that defied physics. "You asked what makes me dangerous," Shin said, appearing behind General Huan before she could turn around. "Let me show you what Earth governments learned about human potential when they decided to create perfect soldiers. They learned that the most effective predator is not the strongest or fastest. It is the one that understands its prey better than the prey understands itself." His hand moved to touch a pressure point at the base of her skull that no human should have known existed. General Huan collapsed instantly. Her nervous system shut down by techniques that came from medical knowledge combined with combat training, in ways that created something entirely new. Around the detention center, alarm bells screamed warnings that came far too late. Security systems that should have locked down the facility instead opened every door and deactivated every barrier. The ship computer began announcing system failures in multiple languages, while emergency crews ran through corridors trying to understand what was happening. Captain Day fired his energy weapon at point-blank range, releasing a blast that should have disintegrated any biological creature, but the weapon discharged harmlessly into empty space because Shin was already somewhere else, moving through the ship with purpose and direction that showed he understood their vessel better than they did. Agent Q backed toward the nearest exit, finally comprehending that they had not captured a criminal. They had released something into the heart of their invasion fleet that was systematically dismantling everything they had built. "You are just one human," he said desperately. "We have 10,000 soldiers on this ship alone." Shin paused in his movement toward the command center and looked back with those dark eyes that seemed to see everything. "Yes," he agreed in that same calm voice that had never changed tone since his awakening. "But here is what you never understood about humans during all your months of study. We are not dangerous because we are physically superior to other species." The lights went out, completely plunging the detention center into darkness, broken only by emergency illumination that cast everything in blood-red shadows. "We are dangerous." Shin's voice continued from somewhere in the darkness because we never stop learning. "Every challenge teaches us something new. Every enemy shows us weaknesses we had not seen before. Every system we encounter becomes another tool we can use." Behind him, alien soldiers poured into the detention center only to find their commanders unconscious on the floor and their prisoner gone. The massive manhunt began immediately with thousands of troops searching every corridor, every room, every possible hiding place on the ship, but they were no longer the hunters. They had become the prey commander. Tayek stood on the command bridge watching status reports flood in from across the entire invasion fleet. Their ships were reporting navigation errors that sent vessels off course into empty space. Communication systems failed at random intervals, leaving commanders isolated from their fleets. Weapons powered down during critical system checks, and life support showed fluctuations that made no sense. None of the aliens understood that these were not random equipment failures. They were symptoms of a much larger problem. The monster they thought was safely contained in an energy cage had gotten loose. Among the machinery that kept them alive in the cold vacuum of space, in the ventilation systems of the ship. Shin moved like a ghost through passages designed for maintenance robots. His enhanced memory had absorbed every schematic, every blueprint, every technical manual the aliens possessed during his brief time in their detention center. Now he used their own infrastructure against them. The ship engineers worked frantically to repair systems that seemed to break faster than they could be fixed. Every time they thought they had found the source of a problem, 10 new malfunctions would appear in different sections. Power conduits that had worked perfectly for years suddenly developed shorts that cascaded through entire networks. What they did not understand was that each failure was carefully planned and precisely executed. Shin was not randomly destroying their technology. He was surgically dismantling the complex systems that allowed their massive ships to function, turning their greatest strengths into fatal weaknesses. From hidden positions throughout the vessel, he watched alien soldiers run past, carrying weapons that would not fire and communication devices that produced only static. He observed their growing panic as they realized that their technologically superior civilization was being defeated by a single human who understood their weaknesses better than they understood them themselves. The Baba Yaga had awakened, and he was very, very good at his job. The underground facility stretched deep into the Colorado mountains like a metal worm, burrowing through solid rock. The entrance was hidden beneath layers of concrete, steel, and technology designed to keep the world safe from what lived in the deepest levels. Agent Q and his team used their phase technology to walk through solid walls like ghosts, following heat signatures and electromagnetic readings toward their target. The facility felt different from the normal prison they had visited earlier. The walls here were 3 times thicker, made of materials that could stop nuclear explosions. The lights burned brighter, casting harsh shadows that seemed to move when no one was looking. Every surface appeared to be designed not just to keep someone inside, but to prevent something terrible from getting out. As they moved deeper underground, the corridors became more secure. Each level had blast doors that could seal off sections of the facility in case of emergency. Motion sensors covered every inch of space, and cameras pointed in all directions. But some of the cameras faced inward toward the cells, as if the guards needed to watch for movement from within. Agent Q noticed that many of the security systems were not designed to keep people out. They were built to contain whatever lived in the lower levels. Warning signs covered the walls in multiple languages. Radiation symbols and biohazard markers appeared on doors that led to areas where no radiation or biological weapons should exist. The team found their target on the lowest level behind doors marked with symbols that made no sense for containing a human prisoner. The cell looked more like a bunker designed to survive war than a place to hold a criminal. 3 feet of reinforced steel separated the corridor from whatever waited beyond, and the metal showed scratches that looked like they came from the inside, through a small window made of bulletproof glass thicker than a human's hand. They could see into the cell. The room beyond was simple, with concrete walls, a basic bed, and a single light that never turned off. In the center of this space sat a figure that looked disappointingly ordinary. Shin appeared human in every way. Average height, with a build that suggested someone who exercised but was not unusually strong. His black hair showed gray at the temples, indicating middle age, and his clothes were simple prison uniforms like thousands of other prisoners wore. Nothing about his appearance suggested danger or explained why 5 alien soldiers had needed to work together just to cut through the doors. The man sat on his bed with perfect stillness. His hands were folded in his lap, and his breathing was so quiet it barely moved his chest. His eyes remained closed, but somehow the aliens knew he was completely aware of their presence. Something about his posture suggested a person who was waiting rather than sleeping. Agent Q studied the containment systems around. The cell advanced technology surrounded the prisoner, including energy fields that could stop projectiles and sensors that monitored every heartbeat and breath. The amount of security devoted to one human seemed ridiculous until the team noticed something that made them pause. The scratches on the inner walls of the cell had not been made by tools or weapons. They appeared to have been carved by human fingernails over many years of patient work. Someone had been counting time by marking. The walls and the number of marks suggested decades of imprisonment. When they finally broke through the final barrier using alien technology that could cut through any known material, Shin opened his eyes slowly. The movement was fluid and controlled, like someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. His dark brown eyes looked at each alien in turn and somehow seemed to see right through their advanced armor and weapons. "You should not have come here," he said in perfect English, though he had never seen an alien before in his life. His voice was calm and quiet but carried more threat than all their weapons combined. The words seemed to hang in the air, like a physical presence that made the temperature drop. The aliens looked at each other, uncertain why such a simple statement felt so menacing. Agent Q tried to laugh, but the sound came out forced and hollow. "This is their most dangerous criminal," he asked his team while gesturing toward the sitting figure. "He looks like he could not hurt a small animal." Shin stood up with movements that were too smooth and controlled for a normal human. His eyes never left theirs, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the same terrifying calm. "You should understand that the people who built this cage were not stupid," they said while looking directly at Agent Q. "They understood some important truths about human nature and about what happens when certain types of people are allowed to walk freely in the world." Lieutenant Bo activated his energy restraints and glowing chains appeared around Shin's wrists and ankles. The bonds were designed to hold creatures 10 times stronger than humans and had never failed to contain any prisoner. "Save your threats for someone who believes them human," he said with confidence. "You are coming with us to help destroy your pathetic species." Shin looked down at the alien technology binding his arms and legs. He studied the energy patterns and the control mechanisms with the focused attention of someone solving an interesting puzzle. Then he looked back up at his captors and smiled for the first time. The expression contained no warmth or humor, only a terrible understanding of what was about to happen. "You have made a very serious mistake," he said softly. But the words seemed to echo in the metal corridors around them. The restraints began to flicker, as if responding to some invisible interference. "But do not worry about your error. You will understand the nature of your mistake very soon." As the aliens prepared to transport him to their ship, none of them noticed that Shin was not struggling against the restraints. Instead, he was memorizing every detail of their technology, studying how the energy bonds worked and learning the patterns that controlled them. His mind cataloged information about their armor, their weapons, and their ship systems. The Baba Yaga was not trying to escape because he did not need to escape yet. He was gathering intelligence and waiting for the perfect moment to begin the work he had been trained to do many years ago. The work that had made Earth governments decide he should never see daylight again. Agent Q felt a strange chill as they moved through the facility toward their extraction point. Something about the prisoner's calm acceptance bothered him. Most creatures fought against capture even when they knew resistance was hopeless. But this human acted like he wanted to be taken, like this was part of some larger plan. The team reached the surface where their ship waited to carry them back to the invasion fleet. As they loaded their prisoner into the transport bay, none of them realized they had not captured Earth's most dangerous criminal. They had awakened him and given him exactly what he needed to begin his work. The ship lifted off from Earth carrying aliens who thought they held a prize that would help them conquer humanity. They had no way of knowing that they were bringing aboard something far more dangerous than their worst nightmares. Something that had been sleeping in darkness, waiting for the right moment to remind the galaxy why some monsters choose to wear human faces. 18 hours after the Baba Yaga had awakened, the proud galactic invasion fleet hung in Earth's orbit like broken toys abandoned by a careless child. Half of their massive warships drifted completely powerless in the cold vacuum of space, while the other half struggled with cascading system failures that their best engineers could not understand. Or Repair Commander Tyke sat in the emergency command center surrounded by the dim glow of battery-powered lights, trying to comprehend how everything had gone so impossibly wrong. His hands shook as he spoke into a communication device that barely functioned. Fleet Command. This is Invasion Force Alpha. We need immediate evacuation. The human prisoner has somehow disabled our entire armada. The words felt impossible even as he spoke them. One man had single-handedly crippled the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever assembled. He had done it without firing a shot, without using weapons, without even leaving the ship where they had imprisoned him. Yet somehow their technological superiority had become useless against an enemy who understood their systems better than they did. Through the corridors of the command ship, Shin moved like a shadow made flesh. He had memorized every deck plan, every system connection, every design flaw in technology that the aliens had believed was perfect. What they had built to project power across star systems, he had transformed into a prison that held them captive in their own vessels. The human criminal had become something far more terrifying than any monster from their darkest nightmares. He was a teacher showing them lessons about warfare that their species had never learned, lessons written in the language of failed systems, and darkened corridors, and the growing realization that their victims might be far more dangerous than their conquerors. In the detention area where this nightmare had begun, Shin found the Earth criminals that the aliens had captured during their confident raid on human prisons. The prisoners cowered in their cells, listening to sounds of chaos echoing through the ship. When they saw the quiet man approaching, some recognized him from whispered stories in maximum security facilities. Others simply knew by instinct that something very dangerous walked among them. Something that made their own reputations for violence seem like children playing games. The way he moved, the way he looked at them, the terrible calm in his voice, all spoke of capabilities that existed far beyond anything they had ever encountered. "Gentlemen," Shin said politely, as he disabled their cell locks with the same casual efficiency he had used to cripple an entire invasion fleet. "I believe you have been forced into someone else's war without your permission. This seems fundamentally unfair to me." The prisoners exchanged uncertain glances. Rico Martinez had been a gang leader whose name once brought fear to entire neighborhoods in Los Angeles. His reputation for brutality had earned him life in prison without possibility of parole. But standing before this quiet man, Rico felt like a frightened child who had wandered too far from home. "What do you want from us?" Rico asked while trying to keep his voice steady. He had heard rumors about the Baba Yaga stories that circulated in the darkest corners of maximum security prisons. Stories that made hardened killers check their cell doors twice before going to sleep. Shin considered the question with the same thoughtful expression he had worn while dismantling alien technology. "I want you to go home," he said. Finally. These aliens believed they could use Earth's criminals as weapons against Earth's people. They were wrong about many things, but mostly, they were wrong about what makes humans truly dangerous. He began leading them through corridors where alien soldiers lay unconscious but unharmed toward the escape pod bay. The path he chose seemed to avoid all the areas where desperate aliens were still searching for their tormentor. Along the way, he explained his plan in that same calm voice that had never changed tone. The invasion fleet will retreat, he told them, carrying stories of Earth's defenders back to galactic command centers. Stories that will make other species think very carefully before threatening humanity again. Your role in this will be to return home and live your lives, knowing that when your planet needed defenders, you chose the right side. They reached the escape pod bay, where dozens of small ships waited to carry passengers back to Earth. The pods were simple but functional, designed to survive atmospheric entry and land safely on the planet's surface. Shin began preparing the launch sequences with the same efficiency he had shown in everything else. "Why are you helping us?" asked Maria Santos, a woman who had killed her abusive husband and 3 of his friends in what the courts had called excessive self-defense. "We are criminals. We have done terrible things to innocent people." Shin paused at the airlock controls and looked at her with something that might have been compassion, because in the old stories, children who wandered into the Baba Yaga's forest received different treatment based on their character. Good children who showed respect, courage, and basic decency always found help getting home safely. He activated the first pod and watched it streak toward Earth's blue atmosphere. "You were brought here against your will to fight against your own people. That makes you victims, not criminals, at least for today." And the children in the stories who deserved help always received it. One by one, the escape pods launched, carrying their human cargo back to a world where they would have a chance to make different choices. The aliens were too busy trying to keep their ships from falling apart to notice the small vessels leaving their fleet as the last pod disappeared toward Earth. Shin made his way to the command bridge through corridors that had become a maze of emergency lighting and panicked voices. The few alien officers still conscious watched him approach with expressions that mixed terror and fascination. They finally understood they were in the presence of something far beyond their worst nightmares. Commander Tyke stood behind the captain's chair, his purple skin pale with fear and exhaustion. "Your invasion is over," Shin told him in that same quiet voice that somehow carried more authority than shouted orders. "Your ships will function long enough to carry you back to wherever you came from. But you need to understand something very important." The alien commander could only nod as he listened to words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "If you ever threaten Earth again, if any species in your galactic community decides that humanity looks weak and vulnerable, I want you to remember this moment," Shin continued while his dark eyes seemed to look into the commander's soul. "There are others like me sleeping in dark places waiting for the right reason to wake up." He moved to the main control console and began entering commands that would restore enough power for the fleet to limp back to galactic space. The repairs were precise, giving them exactly what they needed to survive the journey home, but nothing more. "Remember that your advanced technology, your superior weapons, your thousands of years of conquest mean nothing when you face an enemy that understands systems better than you understand them. Remember that Earth criminals are not weak or cowardly. They are simply operating under different rules than galactic warfare." The lights on the bridge flickered back to life as basic systems came online. Commander Tyke watched in amazement as his ship began to respond to controls that had been dead for hours. "How did you learn our technology so quickly?" he whispered. Shin smiled one final time before disappearing back into the shadows of the ship. "I told you before, I am very good at understanding systems. Your mistake was thinking that included only the systems you could see." Hours later, the alien fleet began its slow retreat from Earth orbit, carrying stories that would spread across the galaxy like wildfire, stories about the world whose criminals were more dangerous than most species' greatest warriors. Stories about humans who could turn superior technology against itself with nothing but intelligence and determination. And most importantly, stories about the monster called Baba Yaga who judged those deserving help from those deserving to feed the oven. The legend would grow with each telling until every species in galactic space understood that some worlds were too dangerous to conquer, and some sleeping monsters were better left undisturbed. On Earth, governments quietly reviewed their most classified files and added new security measures to facilities that already existed beyond official knowledge. Some doors they decided should remain locked even tighter, Some legends should stay hidden in the deepest darkness until the day when humanity truly needed its most dangerous guardian to wake up and protect the children who had wandered too far from home, in a facility beneath the Colorado mountains. New warnings appeared on cell doors written in languages from across the galaxy. The message was simple but clear. The Baba Yaga sleeps here. Do not wake him, do not test him, and pray that you never give him reason to open his eyes again.